Good afternoon, Professor. How are you?
Good afternoon, Frank. This has been an eventful week, and one event has actually swamped the news, and there's a lot of conflicting opinions about how we should react to it. And the amazing thing is that one of the things that has been said from the beginning is that this has been the 18th school shooting this year so far, though I have not seen any detail of, I had no idea there'd been that number, and I've not seen any list of them anywhere. But have you seen
it? I saw that. I don't think they're referring to mass shootings. I think it might be one-off shootings. I mean, I don't know where the
Yes,
I don't know where
I
the
agree, but still, nevertheless, illegal shootings
right,
at schools,
right.
apart from all the other shootings that take place all the time. So the question is this new? If it's new, does it have anything to do with other things that are going on in society? I mean, so far the main reaction to it is that it has to do with the mental health of one particular teenager. But I think that mental health is a subject that is not well understood, and I mean, it became very, what should I say, a very well-known problem in the 20th century, starting with Freud and Jung just 100 years ago. And the number of psychiatrists and psychologists have increased at an amazing rate ever since. But I think that being a social scientist myself, it's always been my impression, and also since I have experience living in a number of different countries, that what causes a lot of these problems is people somehow not fitting into their social context. And that may be curable by a psychiatrist, I don't know, but I think that we need much more information, much more detailed understanding of the relationship between the individual and the society. And that's been a problem in social science ever since the beginning of social science, but we don't make much progress on it. And the problem really now is that everything we have in our society that has to do with the way it works was developed for a much smaller society than the one we now live in. And so that it was much less likely that somebody would find themselves out of place in the society they grew up in 50 years ago, let alone 100 years ago, than it is now. And somehow we have to rework our ideas about how people can fit into their social context so that they have the relationships that they need. We're a social species. Individuals can't, or most individuals can't operate comfortably in life without a certain number of relationships.
Right.
And the relationships that everybody used to have simply don't come about automatically anymore.
No, they don't.
So I think that's where this has to start. And I think that the same thing is happening in other countries that are seeing very fast increases in population. It's interesting that in this country, the main concern about society has to do with immigration, about the increase in the numbers of people by them coming in from outside, even though this immigration used to be the main way of
the main engine of growth.
Yes. it's never made clear. The people who are worried about immigration usually consider that immigration is a problem because the wrong sort of people come in.
Correct.
And they don't see it as being any problem of when they come in that they can't fit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And obviously it can be more difficult for immigrants to fit into the social context than people who actually grow up here.
Right.
But in fact, since the family is not what it used to be, and marriage is not what it used to be, weddings aren't what they used to be, people don't necessarily get married, and gender isn't what it used to be. And in fact, now you can choose your own gender if you don't like what you were born with.
Right.
That makes it very much more difficult for people to fit into the society that they grow up in. Whereas the people who come in from outside tend, and this is particularly true in some countries, especially in Europe, all to huddle together in one small community with the other people who came in with them.
Right.
Rather than become misfits in the larger society.
Well, there's no doubt. There's no doubt that everything that you've said about social embrace of people and the diminution of that over the last 50 or so years, and people feeling continually adrift and lost. There's no doubt all of that is true. And there's no doubt that if we could wave a magic wand somehow and make everybody feel belonging and part of something and part of a family or part of a group and gave them an outlet, whatever it might be, so that they felt that they were quote unquote normal, that would be a gigantic step forward. But, and you know where I'm going to go on this, there is no other country on earth except perhaps Somalia where the prevalence of weapons is so easy to obtain, and it's just out of control now. And this was a terrible tragedy. It was awful. We're all inured to this, seeing the helicopters overhead with the kids streaming out of the school with their hands on the back of the kid in front of them, with the police racing in, with the parents distraught and crying. We've seen this 100 times, and we're just going to keep seeing it over and over and over again until Congress does something about the gun laws. It's just that simple.
But even if Congress does something about the gun laws, there's still going to be the same number of guns.
Most likely. Yeah. It's.
So it's going to take a long time before legislation could have any effect.
Yeah, because people aren't going to give the guns up. You're exactly right. I mean, I read something this morning that the weapon that the kid used, the AR-15 or whatever it might be, something like 2 million of them were sold in the United States last year.
Yeah.
I mean, 2 million of them. I mean, what in God's name does anybody have a use for such a weapon for? It's a weapon of war, and I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, I do know what's going to happen. It's just going to keep repeating itself, and nothing's going to change.
It's very strange, and I'm afraid it's probably going to get worse.
Of course, as more people become disaffected, and as the economy, as we've seen now with the budget that's been submitted, and the people at the bottom are continually being squeezed out and become increasingly disillusioned. I mean, I think you're going to see more of this. You're exactly correct.
It's a very strange situation in that insofar as a motive has been found, well, a motive hasn't been found yet, but the search for a motive all points to links, things in social media, and links to white supremacist groups.
I would take that with a grain of salt. I think
irrelevant, because the boy himself had said that he's going to shoot the people at the school.
Correct.
So it's the wrong way round.
It's unfathomable that a 19-year-old
Mm,
boy can find himself in a position where the logical thing for him to do is to take an assault weapon and kill 17 people in order to make himself noticed. I mean, that's really what we're talking about now. I mean, this is not a good
uh,
situation.
it's also amazing that you can get a lift from Uber and walk into the school with all these things.
Right?
Uh, I mean, it's so easy to do it, and there's nothing set up to make it difficult.
No, there's not. There's not. It's
Uh,
the same thing in Las Vegas with that person up on the 50th floor. I mean, the cleaning
yeah,
staff went in
yeah,
there for days on end, and the guy
yeah,
had an arsenal in there. Nobody thought to
yeah,
comment on it. Presumably he hid some of them, but come on, and anybody cleaning the room would not have noticed weapons.
yeah. Uh,
It's a good night to stay
so
home. Home is safe in your house.
it's going to be interesting from a purely analytical point of view to see how the discussion develops over the next few weeks,
Yep.
and see whether it actually changes tone and whether new ideas come to the fore and people start suggesting different ways of dealing with it. Because something like this actually could lead to interesting discussion about the way society is changing. But I don't think anybody yet has said anything about the fact that this sort of thing happens much more now than it used to.
Well, I think
Which
you're as usual. You're being the optimist. I don't think that that's going to happen. I don't think anything is going to change. So
uh, well, I'm an optimist because I am interested in trying to work these things out, and it makes my life worth living having
yes,
something interesting to work out that
indeed,
is not causing me personal trouble.
indeed, indeed.
But to make people aware of the fact that their society is changing, and that it has been changing at a faster and faster rate since the middle of the last century, I think is what is necessary. And so we'll see what happens in the next few weeks.
Well, hopefully something will. Hopefully something will.
Huh.
All right. Thank you very much, Professor Spooner. We'll talk next week.